Welcome to the debate. Today, we're diving deep into the recent Apex Legends anti-cheat update. This is a really comprehensive report from the developers about their ongoing battle against unfair play, which is often quite challenging, let's be honest. This update gives us a pretty detailed look at new tools, new strategies, new metrics. And it really prompts a critical question for us today. Does this update truly signal a clear, substantial step forward in fighting cheating in Apex Legends? Or does it mostly just highlight the persistent, inherent challenges of keeping games fair against an enemy that's always changing? I'm interested in the evidence of measurable progress that they present in this update, and I'll be exploring why I believe it really signals a significant advancement, showing a robust and, importantly, adaptable strategy against cheating.
And I'll be offering, well, perhaps a more cautious perspective. While I absolutely commend the developers' diligent efforts, you can see the work they're putting in. I'm going to argue that the information also sheds light on the enduring and really complex nature of cheating. It suggests that getting to a definitively cheat-free environment, that might remain an elusive goal.
Okay, so my take is this. The recent anti-cheat update for Apex Legends, it really provides compelling evidence of substantial progress. I mean, well-orchestrated progress and a genuinely proactive approach to game integrity. The report specifically details an additional data stream which improved tracking and expanded our console detections. Now, this leads to far more encompassing numbers, as they put it, than what they've shared before. This isn't just about grabbing more data points, it's about making, quote, more strategic decisions around resourcing. This expanded visibility lets the developers see the cheating landscape with, honestly, unprecedented clarity. It helps them put resources where they'll actually make the most difference. Furthermore, the launch of a new tool system that demonstrably increased their adaptability against evolving cheats. And they give evidence, a significant decrease of 33% with teaming reports since February. That's a concrete, measurable win, right, against a specific and, frankly, frustrating type of cheating. Then there's the team's active development, the testing of in-house gameplay detection models for aimbots and anti-recoil. That shows a real commitment to tackling even the most sophisticated cheats head-on. These aren't just reactive patches. It feels like an investment in, future-proofing their defenses. And crucially, the focus on improving our time to ban. That's a direct, effective strategy to drive down MIR, the match infection rate, measuring matches with at least one cheater. It shows they understand how to lessen the cheater impact on players. So these aren't minor tweaks. They're strategic enhancements across data, tools, targeted actions. It all points towards a winning, evolving strategy.
They're not just plugging holes, they seem to be building a more resilient system overall.
Right. And while I certainly commend those diligent efforts outlined in the update, I do approach this from a slightly different angle. One that suggests we really need to temper our optimism with a perhaps more realistic understanding of the perpetual challenge that unfair play presents. I mean, the update itself describes anti-cheat as a, and I quote, never-ending process with a plethora of pieces that are constantly in motion. That's not just flowery language. It's an acknowledgement of this ongoing arms race, where any step forward on one side, well, it inevitably triggers a countermove from the other. The reported fluctuations in key metrics like the match infection rate, or MIR, which, as you mentioned, measures the proportion of matches with at least one cheater, and the reports per user, the RPU, tracking how often players report stuff. These fluctuations, compared to previous seasons, well, they attribute them partly to new data streams, sure, but they just don't paint a picture of a universal, definitive decline in cheating. Honestly, these fluctuations often suggest more of a cat-and-mouse game than a steady victory march. And crucially, the update highlights that MIR is, quote, typically the highest in ranked, where most cheaters congregate, and increases as you move up ranked tiers, with, get this, diamond and master level matches being twice as likely to be infected than the global ranked infection rate. Now, this tells me that the core competitive experience, where game integrity arguably matters most to the most dedicated players, it remains significantly compromised. Moreover, think about the definition of MIR itself. where only one of the 60 players in a BR match, a Battle Royale match, needs to be cheating for the entire match to be tagged as infected. That means a high MIR can persist and negatively affect 59 other players, even if that one cheater gets banned relatively quickly. This suggests the overall player experience, especially in competitive modes, is still heavily impacted, regardless of how fast individual bans happen. And the new tools, they're presented as, quote, continuing to evolve as cheats do, which implicitly confirms that any progress is, well, maybe a temporary victory in this ongoing arms race, rather than a definitive, lasting solution.
Okay, now that we've laid out our initial positions, let's dive into maybe our first key disagreement. How do we really interpret the impact of these new tools and the expanded data? Is it definitive progress, or is it just a temporary leg up in an evolving threat landscape? From my perspective, the introduction of that new tool system back in Season 23, the one analyzing gameplay indicators for various unfair play types, that truly marks a significant leap. It's not just a minor tweak. Its adaptable nature and that explicit success in cutting down teaming reports by 33% when compared to February, those are concrete, measurable results. They directly improve the player experience. This isn't just theory. It's a direct impact on a specific, really annoying type of cheating.
And what's more, the ability to target bot farms, those automated accounts used for boosting or whatever, and developing an automated bot detection model alongside dedicated in-house models for things like aimbots and anti-recoil. It just showcases a robust, multifaceted response. It feels technologically advanced. That additional data stream for consoles allows for a more encompassing view, as they say, and critically, enables more strategic decisions around effort prioritization and resourcing. So this isn't just about catching more cheaters. It's about being smarter, more surgical, and ultimately more effective in fighting them. It feels like a shift, from purely reactive stuff to more proactive, data-driven security.
I understand your interpretation of the tools and the strategic shift they represent. Absolutely. But I'd frame it differently, perhaps focusing more on the broader context of that evolving threat. While the new tools are certainly a positive step in detection, maybe mitigation too, the report itself concurrently states, and this is key for me, that the system will evolve as new variants of cheating are introduced. That's a crucial qualifier, right? It suggests that any gains we see are constantly being challenged by new, sophisticated methods from the cheat developers. This isn't a static battle where one side just, wins. It's dynamic, it's ongoing. And that 33% reduction in teaming reports, it's welcome, sure, but does it necessarily translate directly to a 33% reduction in actual teaming incidents? Maybe not. Players might just be reporting less, perhaps. Fatigue sets in, or maybe the ways people team up have just shifted to be less obvious.
More broadly, those overall fluctuations in MIR and RPU across different platforms, they just prevent us from declaring a clear, definitive downtrend. We can't confidently say, yes, this is a consistent victory across the board. And I'd argue that the focus on detecting more, like with the expanded console bans you mentioned, could actually mean that the actual prevalence of cheating might have been significantly higher than we previously understood. So this improvement in measurement, while valuable for them, doesn't necessarily mean the problem itself is shrinking in absolute terms. It might just mean our visibility into a persistent issue is getting better. We're simply seeing more of what was perhaps already there, which for players can actually be quite unsettling.
But surely improving our ability to measure and detect is a fundamental form of progress, right? Because it directly enables better targeting and more effective mitigation. You highlighted the persistent nature of the threat, and yeah, I agree it's an arms race. But this update shows the developers aren't just sitting back and reacting. They seem to be trying to set the pace. That strategy of improving time to ban, it directly addresses PIR. Because as they say, detecting cheaters quicker means they'll impact less matches. This proactive approach, it's key to improving overall match integrity. It's maybe not about eradicating cheating entirely, which is, let's face it, a monumental, perhaps impossible task, but it is about mitigating its impact on the vast majority of legitimate players. If a cheater gets booted within minutes of joining a match, their ability to disrupt is significantly cut down.
and the differentiation of MIR across modes and tiers, noting that unranked modes have a significantly lower MIR between -50% to -80% compared to ranked. Well, that indicates a clear understanding of where to focus their efforts. It tells us the problem isn't uniformly spread across the whole game, allowing them to target resources to the most vulnerable, high-stakes areas like ranked play. And the increase in total bans across the board, which the report details, that highlights active, aggressive, and expanding enforcement. This isn't just measuring, it's acting on the measurements.
While faster bans are certainly an improvement in response time, I'm just not convinced that the MIR metric as it's currently defined truly reflects a satisfactory player experience, even with those improved ban times. Let me explain why I feel that way. Even with quicker bans, that high MIR in ranked, particularly in Diamond and Master level matches, being twice as likely to be infected than the global ranked rate, that means the most dedicated, the most competitive players are disproportionately exposed. These are the people most invested in the game's competitive integrity, often the backbone of the whole scene. The psychological impact of constantly running into cheaters, even if they vanish quickly, well, it can be deeply discouraging. It erodes trust in the entire system. And the very definition of MIR member, just one of the 60 players, can infect the whole match. That means the perceived integrity for the other 59 players can still feel low, even if that one bad actor is removed swiftly. Players often remember the negative hit more vividly than the quick cleanup. So the impact on the game's integrity, especially at that competitive peak, it remains a significant concern despite these mitigation efforts. Those fluctuations we keep mentioning also imply these metrics aren't consistently trending downwards everywhere, which complicates any claim of a definitive improvement in the overall player experience or a meaningful reduction in the feeling of being cheated. For a competitive player, the difference between hitting a cheater in 1 in 10 matches versus 1 in 5, that can be the difference between staying engaged or just walking away from that mode entirely.
Right, but I think the developers are genuinely trying to tackle the root problem here through a pretty robust commitment to transparency and community feedback. That directly builds trust and crucially informs their strategy. Their commitment to, quote, give as much transparency as we can to our community, it doesn't feel like just lip service. It seems like a strategic choice. Look at the inclusion of community-suggested report options like wall hacking, impossible game sense. That shows genuine engagement, responsiveness to what players are actually seeing and feeling. This isn't just a one-way street of them telling us things. It's a feedback loop. It empowers players, gives them a sense of participation in keeping the game clean. Plus, it provides critical ground-level intel that, honestly, no automated system can fully replicate. Community reports are often the first smoke signal for a new cheat variant, right?
And the consistent updates they push out on blogs, Reddit, Steam, X, Twitter, that just reinforces this commitment to ongoing communication. It shows this is a continuous collaborative effort with the player base. This constant flow of information, where they acknowledge challenges but also detail progress, that's almost an anti-cheat tool in itself. It makes players feel heard, valued. It also provides context for those metric fluctuations we discussed, helping players understand why they might be seeing certain numbers, rather than just feeling confused or ignored.
That's a very compelling argument for the value of transparency, and I absolutely agree that community engagement is crucial, no question. However, I would challenge whether this detailed transparency always translates into a clear understanding for the average player, or if it might, sometimes, maybe inadvertently, manage perception more than it definitively signals a reduced problem. While transparency is appreciated, these detailed metrics, though insightful for maybe us or analysts, are actually quite complex for the everyday player logging in for a few matches. The report itself notes that values can vary significantly per player, per match, per session, and even per region. That inherent complexity makes it incredibly challenging for the average player to truly gauge the overall state of the game's integrity, or, the ultimate effectiveness of all these measures.
Without a clear, consistent story of improvement, such complex data can feel overwhelming, maybe even contradictory. The report focuses heavily on what they are doing and how they are measuring it, rather than definitively stating the problem is resolved or even the problem is significantly reduced across the board. For instance, that phrase, You may see the impact on MIR and player reports in our future data shares regarding third-party bot detection. Well, that suggests many of these efforts are still in their early stages of actually demonstrating widespread lasting impact. This future-focused language, while honest, doesn't yet represent a definitive shift now. It's more like a promise of potential future results. It almost feels like the transparency is perhaps managing player expectations and the perception of effort rather than delivering a conclusive victory that players can definitively feel in their day-to-day matches.
Okay, so we've thoroughly examined the recent Apex Legends anti-cheat update from two pretty distinctive perspectives. I've highlighted what I see as substantial, measurable progress. I've emphasized the implementation of new, adaptable tools, the expanded data collection, and the strategic initiatives aimed at reducing cheating and improving match integrity. We've seen concrete reductions in specific cheat types, like that 33% decrease in teaming reports, and what looks like a clear roadmap for future development through in-house detection models. For me, this points to a sophisticated, evolving strategy that is, I think, effectively mitigating the impact of unfair play.
And I, while fully acknowledging these diligent and, frankly, necessary efforts, have consistently emphasized the inherent, never-ending process nature of anti-cheat. I've pointed to those persistent high match infection rates, especially in top-tier ranked play, the complexities of interpreting metrics like MIR in terms of the actual player experience, and just the ongoing, evolving nature of the threat itself. Our discussion really underscored that even with significant progress in detection and enforcement, the player experience, particularly in those competitive environments, continues to face real challenges, with the goalposts constantly shifting as new cheats inevitably emerge.
Ultimately, both perspectives, I think, illuminate the immense dedication and resources required to combat unfair play in such a dynamic online environment. Listeners are really left to consider whether these reported advancements represent a pivotal turning point in the fight against cheating, or if they are, perhaps, just crucial, yet maybe temporary, steps in an ongoing, complex, and possibly unwinnable war of attrition against an ever-adapting adversary.
What's absolutely clear is that the pursuit of fair play is a continuous journey, and there is undoubtedly much more to explore within the nuances of these metrics and, of course, the continuing evolution of game security itself.